Facebook, email us at head2headpinball@gmail.com or go to our website at head2headpinball.com. So welcome to the Head2Head Pinball podcast. This is our first podcast. My name's Martin. I'm the co-host, and with me...
It's Ryan C.
Ryan C, how are you, mate?
Pretty good, mate. We're here to talk about pinball.
We're here to talk about a lot of things pinball. But before we start, I just wanted to sort of give a bit of a situation of why we decided to come together and do the Head2Head podcast. Basically, a couple of months ago, we met. Really, we haven't known each other for all that long.
It sounds like a love story, Marty.
It does sound. It probably will be over time. Cue that lovely music. But I just remember the first time I met you, we talked a lot. And I had to leave, but I remember, God, I could talk for hours about pinball to you. And then I heard you on some podcasts, and it just dawned on me. I thought, you know what? We should do a podcast. I'm coming more from the competitive scene, and you're from?
More of the collectors scene, but I'm sure now that we're best mates, we will start to kind of morph each other's interests in pinball.
Yeah, I think my main goal with this is to get you into competitive pinball. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I'm coming along to your next Melbourne Silver Ball League in the city, so we'll see. We'll report back in a couple of weeks.
We'll have to pay everybody off to make sure that you win.
Yeah, that's how it works, right?
It really is how it works.
One good game and you get addicted.
Well, that's what it's like. I mean, we'll probably go into competitive pinball in detail and how I got into it, but it pretty much is that. As soon as you have a good moment, you want more of it. But that's like playing pinball, isn't it?
Sure. And we're trying to fill the hole that was left by Pinheads, which is an Australian podcast, and they haven't done a podcast in about 7 months. So we think they're on a pretty long hiatus, and we're not sure if and when they're going to come back. So we wanted to create a podcast for all the Aussies out there, but also anyone else that wants to listen to us, whether you're in the US or New Zealand or Europe.
Yeah, so a big shout out to Rod and the boys. They did a great podcast and would love to see them back again.
Sure.
So where can you find us, Ryan?
We've gone all in and we've registered our own website, head2headpinball.com. So it's head, the number 2, headpinball.com. You can find all of our future podcasts there. On Facebook, just search Head2Head Pinball with no spaces in between. Our email is head2headpinball@gmail.com. Our Twitter is H2H Pinball, and our Instagram is Head2Head Pinball. And if you go on that now after the first episode, pretty much all of those will be absolutely blank. But hopefully we'll actually have some content in the future to put there. But send all of your abuse and messages and feedback to head2headpinball@gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that we've spoken about when we were thinking about putting this podcast together is that, you know, hopefully your experience that you've had collecting machines and particularly, you know, owning machines and being able to fix machines and really getting under the bonnet, so to speak, that will teach me a lot about pinball machines, because I don't have the patience for that kind of stuff. As I've said, I'm more into competition, so for me it's about what shots do I need to do to get to the high score, whereas I think for you, you've got a different take on that.
Yeah, I usually like playing pinballs to get to the end. So if the product of getting to the end is a high score, then that's a double bonus. But yeah, I usually don't play pinballs just to get a high score and to beat someone. So and we heard some interesting news about Star Wars and that software, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Oh, we will.
Yeah. So how about a quick profile, Martin? How did you? What's your earliest memory of pinball? What pinballs do you have now? What are your holy grail themes? And what's your involvement in the pinball scene?
Okay, so look, I am a little bit older than you, so my earliest memory, and I know I did play pinball before this memory, but my earliest memory was coming home from school every afternoon. There was a milk bar on the way home from school. And we weren't allowed to stop into this milk bar. We used to have to go straight home from school. But I used to stop in there every afternoon, and if I didn't have money, I would watch. And, I was probably, I think, maybe 6 or 7 at the time, maybe a little bit older. And my brothers really got me into it. They played a lot of pinball as well. I think
Did they have more than one machine there, or is it you were just watching one machine?
One machine,
Do you remember what it was?
I know it's an absolute, it's a bit of a stinker these days, but the very first machine I remember, now as I said I played before, but the one I remember is Disco Fever by Williams.
Okay, I have no idea.
No, of course you don't. No. So a lot of people are probably just rolling their eyes at the moment. I believe it was the first, but one of 2 machines that came with banana flippers.
Oh, yeah.
I
know what those are.
You know what those are. I think the other one was Time Warp, and it had banana flippers, but they were blue. And you know what? It wasn't necessarily the best game, but it was pinball, and it's what got me into it at the time. So what pinballs do I have now? I've got probably 5 in my possession at the moment. So I don't know that we've got a couple of machines that we share. So I've got a Wizard of Oz. I've got a Hobbit, the Smaug edition. I have a Star Trek Limited Edition. I have a Star Trek Next Generation, which is on loan from a friend of mine, Stu.
Sounds like you're a bit of a Trekkie, right?
Funny you should say that. I was thinking that earlier, that I thought this would come up. I'm not a Trekkie. I would call myself a Trekker. The difference being I've watched all the movies, I've watched all the TV shows, but I don't dress up.
It sounds like you're still a Trekkie, though. with a little asterisk on the end, right?
I think, but
you can try and cover it up any way you want with any technicality. I think to everyone else you're a Trekkie. Maybe to a hardcore Trekkie you're not.
Yeah, they would not look at me and think that I'm on their level.
Okay, different levels of crazy, eh?
Yeah, and the other one I've got is Jurassic Park, which is on location at the moment.
Okay.
And look, Grail pin. There's probably nothing that I really that's been made that I really yearn for. I've pretty much, well, the main game that I really wanted, that I remembered, and I know I get a lot of people are probably going to think this is crazy as well, but the game that I really wanted when I first got back into pinball and decided that I wanted to buy a machine was roller games. Now, for a number of reasons. It's really cheesy, right? And what people will find out over time is that the cheesier the better with me. I do find kitsch to be quite a bit of fun. But sadly that actually has moved on. I actually rethemed it for a client.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did, and sent it up.
You said you don't get your hands dirty, Marty. What's going on?
Oh, look, sometimes I have to, but people that know me know that as soon as I lift up the table, things get worse. So
okay.
Luckily I know a lot of good people that can come and help me fix. But if I could think of a theme that I really would want, and I'll just say there's 2 things. First of all, Harry Potter. If they made a Harry Potter theme, they would take my money straight away. And if it was Jersey Jack, even better, because I think he would be able to have the spirit of the Harry Potter world.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's I'll probably leave it at that. The other theme is probably a what should they make theme, and we'll leave that for another podcast.
Okay.
And what's my involvement? Well, I do run a league, which is the Melbourne Silverball League, which you can find on Facebook and Twitch as well. Yeah, so I do streaming as well. So twice a week I do streaming, and it's for the fun of pinball, but it's actually really to experience a lot of gin.
And you seem to get better at playing pinball as well once you've had a couple of shots, right?
Well, that's generally the theme. It's what I was trying to experiment with was how long is it going to take for me to drink before my game actually decreases, and I think it's about 3 standard drinks.
3 drinks, okay.
And how about
He
yourself?
did the science.
I did.
Okay. My earliest memory of pinball was my dad. I have no idea why, because wasn't a pinball guy. He had a Bally Strikes and Spares and he's a bit of a hoarder. So our garage had no cars in there. It was just his stuff. And right at the back, next to all the nudie magazines and stuff, was a Bally Strikes and Spares. And as a little kid, kind of, I hadn't gone through puberty yet, but I used to just look at that girl on the back, Lars, and I was like, there was no internet back then, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, there was, but we didn't have it. So I was probably, 5 or 6 years old. I used to look at her and say, wow, like, that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life.
I'm going to have a look at that now.
And you look at it now and you might have a little laugh, but I mean, it's funny, sex sells, and as a young kid, that's what kind of got me into pinball, so to speak. What pinballs do I have now? I've got Tron LE, Star Trek LE, Metallica LE, AC/DC Premium, Simpsons Pinball Party, Lord of the Rings, Getaway, Fishtails, Attack from Mars, A Wizard of Oz, and I've got a Doctor Who that's sitting at a friend's house that came when I was on holiday, and I've got to pick it up tomorrow. And I've also got a Hobbit limited edition, Spider-Man, and a Walking Dead Pro. So, yeah, a lot of pinballs. A couple of them are on site. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to include them, but I'm still
I included mine, so...
Yeah, we're still kind of like hobby. We're not, serious into sliding machines. So I still consider them mine, and I still treat them like they're my own, and polish them every time I empty the coin box. So they're still my pinball machines. Holy Grail pinballs. Yeah, there's no pinball out there that I want more than ones that I kind of already have. A Holy Grail theme that hasn't been done. Well, there was two. There was Ghostbusters and a Back to the Future, like a modern day version of the Back to the Future. But I was kind of so disappointed with Ghostbusters that I'm kind of over the whole Holy Grail, theme, because the more you hype it up in your mind, the more likely you are to be disappointed. I mean, there's a general kind of theme that I like in pinball, and you can design a good game around that. Having the world's best thing that means something to you doesn't necessarily mean you're going to enjoy the pinball. So I've kind of erased that from my thinking. My involvement in pinball, well, not much, not that. I mean, I'm supporting the pinball, the pinball industry by buying a lot of pinball machines.
Well done.
Well done to me. Pat on the back. I am making mirror blades, and I import LEDs at the moment, but that's just for fun and to meet more people. And I'm involved in the kind of the Aussie arcade collector community, so to speak. So, I do hold pinball meets every once in a while at my house and also attend them. But, looking to try to get into tournaments again. So, we'll see how we go.
We'll see. Well,
that's me.
Awesome. And so, question without notice, what is your favourite machine?
My favourite machine at the moment is Tron, and simply because I'm kind of addicted to the shorter playing games at the moment. When I started off, it was all Bally Williams, and then it turned to really long playing Sterns like Simpsons and Lord of the Rings, and then there's Wizard of Oz by Jesse Jack. And I just find that the kind of the less... the smaller amount of time that I have, if my wife says, hey, we got to go out in 15 minutes, like, make sure you're ready. And I'm already ready. Do I have half game of Wizard of Oz? Like, do I, am I going to get a satisfying 15-minute game, or do I have 3 games of Tron and have a really good time? So I'm addicted to Tron and Star Trek as well. But it always changes. I mean, I've played Simpsons Pinball Party for probably 2 hours today and kind of falling back in love with it. So it's always changing. And yourself, Marty?
Well, I was just going to say, so it's interesting because I know that you have probably more of a love of newer machines. Would you agree?
Yes, everything 1990s onwards. If you mention a pinball machine before the 90s, I most likely haven't played it.
Right.
don't have an opinion on it.
Fair enough. Now, the reason why I say that, so my heyday of playing pinball was, 1980 to probably 92 was when I played my most pinball. And what I
You
like...
got to have it in 92, right before the resurgence of pinball, Marty. That's a bad time to get out of pinball.
Well, I was still playing, but it was not... I wasn't playing regularly. It was, I was Sydney at the time. I was living then and just got other interests. But, I was probably still playing till, around 95, 96, but really like playing every day for hours, was from 80 to probably, let's say 92. But the reason why I bring that up is that, you're saying you like Tron because, it is particularly yours, which I've played, which is freaking brutal. But you like that shorter game style, compared to, Wizard of Oz, which, as you know, I've got. But it'd be interesting to take you back even further, to really show you some of those shorter, sharper games from the 80s. So
yeah,
that could be part of our journey together, is for me to introduce you to some of those machines.
Yeah,
I'd
love to have some of those older machines, if only I knew which ones were really good, because, a lot of people kind of, it's hard to get it's easier to get an opinion, I feel, on everything from the 90s onwards. Once you kind of go before then, a lot of the opinions are either tournament based, opinions, or, hey, look at the art.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice and unique for the time. So I have to find someone. I have to play the machine. So I've got a friend who's got about 15 of these machines, and they're super high end restores, and apparently they play beautifully. And I've got to get down to his house. I call him my friend, but I've never been to his place. So it's on the to do list.
Well, I'll see if you can swing me an invite.
Sure.
But I understand, like, when people start talking about EMs, I'm probably in that same boat where, to me, all EMs kind of, they all merge into one. I don't get them. Although, on saying that, when I did go to Arcade Expo last year, I think it was, 2.0, I actually found I spent most of my time playing the EMs, just because I hadn't played them at all, and I was discovering them for the first time. And when I went to Papa this year, I spent a lot of time playing EMs as well.
I'm the opposite. When I go to someone's house, usually this is something I've got to change, and they have say they have like 25 machines, and there's a crossover of two machines that I have. I will play the two machines that I have because I want to see if theirs plays better for some reason, so then I can go home and adjust mine and say, oh hey. And it's so bad because I could be experiencing all these new pinball machines, but yeah, I almost need a coach to sit there and tell me what to do, because if I just go up to a machine, I find it hard to have fun. But we can go into that another day.
Absolutely. Let's go to the news. Okay, so what's the big news that's just happened this weekend in Australia?
We had the Brisbane Masters, which is a fairly big tournament in Australia up north. And,
absolutely.
Who won?
Well, it is actually, there's probably, we don't have like the circuits that we have, that you guys have in the US. There's less of them, but there's probably a few that you would say are the big tournaments, and the Brisbane Masters is one of them. And I'm just trying to remember how many people were there competing. But
I think it was about 80.
Yeah, I think that there certainly was in the Flip Frenzy as well. But our good friend Robert McCauley from Adelaide won, which is great. He also won the Flip Frenzy as well. And he is such a great player to watch. Even, you're not into competition, but watching him play is really good, because he's just very calm, knows his shots, knows the rules, and just has great flipper skills. So,
Is he one of those cradling guys, or is he more on the fly?
No, he's not on the fly. He will catch the ball, and he will take his shot, and he will take his time. So I've seen him before. If let's say a jackpot is counting down, and it might put himself into a bit of a danger, he'll actually just let it go, because he would rather just play the long game, keep the ball in play, and go back to chopping wood to then,
That's why I can never be a good tournament player, because all the music they put into multi-ball and the flashing lights, that is designed to make you excited. It really works on me, and it makes me so nervous, and in a good way. That's what I like about pinball. Yeah. And I remember watching, I think it was Richard Rhodes playing Kiss, and he was like just cradling the balls, and he had like he had like a 10 times multiplier, and he was getting like 500 million a shot on a Kiss. And he was so calm and like emotionless, and I was like, how is he doing this? He's in multi-ball, Gene Simmons is counting him down, and it's obviously a skill that tournament players learn to kind of abstract yourself from the flashing lights and the sound, which
Yeah, and we'll probably go into competitive pinball and the skill that goes with that at a later stage. But in short, for me and my observation is it's one thing, particularly the newer machines, because they're all about multi-ball, right? So It's one thing to be able to know the rules and nail your shots, but those people that really set themselves apart are those that can master multi-ball. So being able to have the balls cradled and being able to select your shots and then...
Are you good at controlling your balls, Marty?
You know I am. I don't know why you had to ask.
Look, I do not know that. For the record, I do not know that. I know you a little bit, Marty, but not that well.
Let's just say I'm getting better at handling my balls, Ryan. So, cool. But look, I was always an on-the-fly player, and you know what, it's one of those things where you go away mid-90s, come back in the 2000s, late 2000s, and realize that particularly when it comes to competitive play, people are playing these machines completely different to how we used to play them. And before it was always just on the fly, the ball would come down, you flip it away. Now the ball control is everything.
I remember there was an interview just after Expo, or maybe the same time as Expo, in the Pinball magazine with Pat Lawler, and he was kind of saying how pinball was never designed for you to sit there and cradle a ball and play for an hour. Like it shouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
And that's why he kind of created that multi-ball feature, that awesome feature, which every time you hit a jackpot, it'll send down a thunderbolt to kind of mess with your flipper, so you can't sit there and cradle up for ages. And I'm sure awesome pinball players will find a way around that, but it's an interesting topic.
And probably just the other thing to note about the Brisbane Masters was I was watching it on the Netherworld Twitch feed, and it was actually really interesting. I don't know if anyone around the world knows the Flip Frenzy format. It's called many different names, but effectively it is playing as many games as you can head-to-head over a period of time, sometimes 2 to 3 hours, and if you win, you get a point. If you lose, and then you tally it up at the end. But they've really developed some fantastic software. And as I was watching the feed, you could hear it was computer voice, but it was a very nice, crisp British voice, a lady who would call the names out of the players and then say what machine they had to go to. Just automated, based on it knowing...
so that's not a human being, that's part of the software.
That's part of the software.
Wow.
So I just think that's good to see some sort of advancements like that in tournaments. So well done to Jimmy Nails, who runs all that.
Okay. Well, did he actually create that, or is that something that's available to everybody?
That I don't know. I'll probably have to... Jimmy, if you hear this podcast, write into us. That's head2headpinball@gmail.com.
We'll get our first email.
We could... but I'll probably send him a note. I don't know. I mean, I know that he did get... he commissioned people that write software to write this software specifically for the Netherworld Flip Frenzy comps that they have there. So, you never know.
Yeah, and there was a pretty new and cool pinball machine that was there, Marty, making its debut in Australia.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably you do need to let everybody know that we are in Australia and we are quite far away from the rest of the world, and so therefore sometimes some machines take a little bit longer to get to us. So this weekend, I think there was a machine in the country, but this was really the first time it was out for public showing, and we're talking, of course, of Stern Star Wars.
Yes, the Star Wars Pro has been in Australia for a while, but they weren't allowed to show it, and they debuted it at the Man Cave Expo over about 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And a couple of people went to that, but we got a lot of impressions and from people that know pinball, tournament players. So we'll get into that a bit later, but it was reading some opinions online. It's a bit polarizing. You got people that really love it, and you got people that absolutely hate it. So we'll go into that a bit later on.
Yeah, we will.
I got sent a picture today when I woke up. Someone sent me a picture of a Star Wars playfield that had some ghosting around those inserts.
What did you call them? The sausage.
I call them sausage inserts, but I'm not.
You're always thinking about sausage.
Yeah. So we're not gonna hit the panic button yet, because it was the first machine we've seen with ghosting, and there are anomalies with every pinball machine that's out there. You can have a playfield chipping on a Jersey Jack machine, but then that's the only one. It could just be a bad process, but
But also that's a very big insert, so with a bit of warping and
Williams used them a lot with like Shoot Again. It was like the Shoot Again insert for like Junkyard, I think, like T2, and a bunch of machines. And I guess the bigger the insert, the more glue you need, I guess. So we'll keep an eye on that. And if it happens to the more machines, it's going to scare a lot of people out of. The Ghostbusters scared a lot of people out of buying new in-box machines, but since they kind of handled it okay in the end, and I think everyone in Australia that had an LE that kind of complains got a replacement playfield. But I think they replaced them because it was, 5 or 6 inserts. Whereas if it's just one insert or 2 inserts, they might say, hey, that's part of pinball, bad luck. And I guess one advantage of pinball taking a long time to get here in Australia is that we can kind of see what's happening in the US. And if shit hits the fan, then you do actually have time to pull out. Not that anyone did for Ghostbusters. Everyone was like, hey, all their machines are ghosting, that's fine. The LE shouldn't have that issue, but they did.
But they do make improvements throughout the production run. I mean, we've talked about the fact that I've got a Wizard of Oz, and I've got the Land Down Under limited edition. Is that the same one that you've got, or have you got the Emerald?
Yeah, I think there's only I think pretty much everyone in Australia has the Land Down Under edition. We got a special edition just for us, just so we wouldn't interfere with the normal Emerald City limited edition ones.
Yeah, and maybe one day we'll talk about the history of Wizard of Oz in Australia, that pinball.
I think like a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, we could read out all the forum posts on it, and we'd have a year's content alone there. But I do remember throughout the production of that, my Wizard of Oz has got the power supply for the PC outside the actual casing of the PC, and then later on it was an internal component.
Yeah. And Jesse Jack have done a lot of. You talk about kind of Stern improving their machines as the production, gets to the end. But Jesse Jack have done so many changes to their machine. Kind of learning from trial and error, so to speak. But the light board issues that that guy Eric that works there totally redesigned the way the lights work. And then Pat Lawler came in and he said, well, why do we have the machine? Why do we have the PC at the bottom of the cabinet? Let's put it in the, behind the LCD screen. And that way it's easier to service, and we can fit deeper mechanisms that can almost touch the bottom of the cabinet. Whereas when you have a 20 centimeter, PC cabinet, PC case, then you're kind of limiting yourself by 20 centimeters. So, interesting to see what they come up with next, because all their 3 machines are totally different. But,
absolutely. But I guess that's probably also the benefit of being, they're beyond a boutique pinball manufacturer. But a lower run, you would assume, allows them to make changes on the fly. Whereas, with Stern,
if you're a massive, the kind of the 1,000-pound elephant or whatever the saying is, it's an elephant can't dance. You can't, the bigger the company, the more processes you have, the harder it is to change something. Whereas all these small companies can change things from pin to pin, and it's not as big of a deal as it would be for Stern. So, moving on to some more news, we got news from Mr. Pinball that I think there's 2 AFMRs, so Attack from Mars remakes, that have now landed in Australia, and I think it's the special edition, which is kind of like the equivalent to a Stern Premium. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And you know what? I've seen only video of this, and I think the remake looks amazing. And I've heard other people comment on it as well. It makes the second-hand market for this one pretty tough.
Don't tell me that, Marty. I've got a really nice restored AF sitting in my.
Forgot about that.
I'm sure there's gotta protect my retail value. Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that will say the original only. The original's the best. It does look good.
Especially, a lot of these kind of collectors that like to work on their machines. I guess the advantage of the new ones is that they're meant to be more reliable, so they probably don't need to work on their machines. But I guess they're thinking long term. They're thinking, hey, I'm going to have this thing for 15, 20 years, or until I die. I want to be able to work on it. And it's it's a 1995 machine, so it's been out for 22 years. People know all the issues, they know how to fix them, there's replacement parts for it. Whereas one of these remakes, what if Planetary Pinball go under or stop making pinball machines? Are you going to be able to get those PCB boards? But we'll get into that a bit later, because what we're going to do is instead of kind of talking about one or 2 topics, we're just going to go through the list of manufacturers and everyone that's producing pinballs at the moment, and
or trying to
just try and give about 5 minutes on each one and what they're up to, and our kind of opinions on them, and then in later podcast episodes we'll dive deeper into them. So first up we have Stern Pinball.
Well, we might as well, right? They, a lot has got to be said for the fact that everyone says that they kept pinball alive, and they really did. Admittedly, they kept it alive with some stinkers at the time, but they've...
How different would it be if Stern was the one who closed up shop and Williams were the one who kept pinball alive? I know they didn't want to, and you can't say that, but I guess it was most of the Williams kind of dream team went to Stern anyway. George Gomez, Lyman Sheets, Steve Ritchie eventually went there. Pat Lawler was there, so they did have all the Williams guys there, but I guess under different management. And there's a lot of amazing Stern pinball machines out there, but Stern does come under the most criticism because they own, I think the stat is over 90% of the market.
Yeah.
So the biggest guys in the room are always going to get the most flack, because that's just human nature to dig on the people that are going well and producing the most pinballs.
Do you think any of the criticism is warranted on cases?
100%. 100% it's warranted. But as I said, with owning a large company comes great responsibility. No, owning a large company, things are a lot harder for them, and they are dealing with bigger licenses than some of the smaller guys. So we can sit here and talk about Star Wars art all day long, but I haven't, and you haven't. We will. I haven't, and you haven't dealt with Disney on, their biggest intellectual property they have. They're not just going to go and say, hey, do whatever you want, and just, we'll give you the tick at the end. It sounds like it's a licensing nightmare to deal with. And the artwork, well, it is what it is. The gameplay, that's something else. So, there are 80 limited edition machines, I believe, coming to Australia, which there's 800 worldwide. So that's 10% of the world stock of LEs just coming to Australia, which is a pretty big portion, considering our population is, about less than a tenth of the US.
Yeah.
And there's other countries besides America and, the United States and Australia. So, we're taking a larger portion per capita than other countries. We do like our pinball machines here.
And look, we will go into a lot of detail about the do's and don'ts and pros and cons of Stern. And obviously, yes, they are the largest manufacturer by a mile. Do you feel that there's some responsibility that they have to progress pinball further? Because the biggest criticism that's really directed at them is they're just rehashing designs or, adding a screen, but the game under the glass is still the same.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer, I guess, because as many people always say, there's only so many things you can do in pinball. But then you kind of see something like Wizard of Oz. I had someone come over to my house the other day who hadn't played pinball in 20 years. And I've got Wizard of Oz in a different room at the moment. It's right next to all my other pinballs, just in a separate room.
Yeah.
And I showed him all these games and he was really, he's like a massive Tron fan. And he played the machine and he was just like, meh. And then I played every single machine with him. And then I walked into the other room and like, and here's Wizard of Oz. And I didn't think he was going to think much of it. And he was blown away. He was just like, wow, like this is it. Like, look at the lights, look at the screen. Like, when was this made? He didn't ask about the other machines. He just assumed all these other machines, even with color DMDs and everything. I think the newest machine I have is probably maybe Star Trek.
Yeah.
And a new Stern machine, and he looked at it and he just assumed that it was, from 20 years ago because you put it next to an AFM and there isn't that much difference.
Yeah.
And I guess Stern's responsibility in keeping pinball alive is to not make too many changes, to make sure that you don't, you saw what happened with kind of Pinball 2000, and people always say how they should have kept to it, and Wizard blocks would have been, RFM. They had to do all the crazy changes to get people, into pinball, into the new format. Star Wars Episode 1, well, that's Star Wars, so licensing restrictions and whatnot. And then Wizard blocks was meant to be that, that groundbreaking kind of game, but
I think without Wizard blocks, we've now got dialed in. So
yeah, exactly. But I mean, who knows? I mean, it could have been an absolute stinker of a game. You don't know. I mean, I think someone's trying to recreate the Wizard blocks now, but
yeah,
I think the software was at like a really very basic level. So I think Stern has to be as careful as they can. Well, they had to be as careful as they can. Now that they've got competitors, they still absolutely dominate the market. So
yeah, and as you said, they go.
Yeah. They do, I think, not the minimum amount required, but I think, I said, with a license like Aerosmith, you can tell they kind of tried, like pretty hard. And, with the Ali, for example, you get a shaker. This is just the whole shaker argument, but like, why doesn't a Star Wars pinball machine, an Ali that costs 12,500 Australian dollars, why does it not have a shaker, which probably only costs them $20 or $30 in
probably
parts.
Because
possibly
it will still sell without it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
and
it seems like Stern at the moment is doing the minimum amount required that they feel they need to sell, to reach their target of sold pinball machines.
Well, I think I say probably the same perspective with different words, but they don't have anything to prove. They are the number one manufacturer, and without them, there wouldn't be necessarily the the hobby that we've got today. But, Jersey Jack had to do a machine that was 120%, had to be that much better to be able to prove to be different. Other manufacturers, and I know we're going to get into them as well, have probably overshot the mark because they have been probably too ambitious with what they've been trying to deliver to prove that they're better than Stern. And I think
Wizard of Oz is a hard pinball machine to follow up as a first pinball. Like when I told my friend, hey, this is a new manufacturer and this is their first pinball machine, he's like, what? This is their first? Like, if you look at side by side, like America's Most Haunted and Wizard of Oz, you got to kind of laugh at they're both unique in their same respect. I'm not saying America's Most Haunted is a bad game. I own one. I loved it. But you can tell they threw the kitchen sink, and they had top men working on it. Keith Johnson rules, and Joe Belsa, I think, is a very unique layout.
Yeah, and but it nearly killed him.
Yeah, it nearly killed him.
Well, I mean, that's probably not actually kill him, but he really struggled for a while, and there was delays as well, and the stress levels that he would have gone through would have been huge, and we spoke to him when he came out to Australia last year, and I was at dinner, and I asked him, and I know that people have asked him this question. I said, was there a time when you really thought, God, is this worth it? I should give up. Now, I think he's a very proud man, so I don't think he would ever have given up. But, there are many companies, even outside the pinball world, where I'll say, better people have failed. So I think he didn't have a fighting spirit, but he also then, I think, and obviously with Hobbit when he had to get new investors in, I think he's a proud man, but I think he also knew, in order to continue, that he had to call people in, and he was lucky that he had good people around him to help him out financially.
Well, he's lucky they had a good product as well in Wizard of Oz, because it was revealed in an interview recently that one of it, the person who bailed him out was also a customer.
Yeah, that's right.
So if his first pinball machine was a steaming pile of crap, then would that person say, "Hey, I believe in your company"? And moving on to Jersey Jack anyway, we can talk about them now.
Sure.
They're creating so much goodwill for their brand. I mean, I know there's still a lot of people that don't like Wizard of Oz, The Hobbit, and not many people in Australia have played Dialed In, except for us lucky Melburnians.
We played it, haven't we?
Yeah, we played it a lot. Let's get into that later. Yeah, I mean, you can. People talk about the theme, and they might not like the layout, and there's certain guys that have come to my pinball meet, and they won't play Wizard of Oz, and because it's a girly theme, like. But it's just my response to that is get over it.
Yeah.
A good pinball machine is a good pinball machine regardless.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's funny to see, like, when people now say, if you look at posts on Pinside or Aussie Arcade, and people say, there's always a thread, what's my dream theme, and what do I want to see get made? And no one is saying, I really want Stern to make it. A couple of years ago, they said, I really want Stern to make it because it'll actually come out. And, all the jokes about Jersey Jack taking 3 or 4 years to build a pinball machine. But I think they've turned the corner now, and I think the plan is to release their 4th pinball machine at Pinball Expo, which would be an amazing turnaround to kind of, The Hobbit and the Wizard of Oz saga, which kind of dragged on for ages. So a lot of people are saying, I want Harry Potter, plus I want Jersey Jack to make it. I don't want Stern or Highway or anything to make it. So
that's exactly what I've said, because I just think that they would understand the spirit of, the universe that they're in, and I think that the attention to detail that the art would need to do the Harry Potter world justice. And to actually be able to have you, we're probably going to, we're going to go into this when we get into the Star Wars review, but that whole immersion, and it doesn't have to be that you're following a storyline. I mean, I've got views on pinball machines whether you need to follow the movie or feel like you're in a movie. I don't think that ever can happen, but to feel like that you're part of something that's happening as opposed to just flipping a ball to get a high score. And I think that that's what Jersey Jack will do. And I think Stern, now that we've talked both of them, Stern, I think, really is focusing more on the competitive angle, the getting the high score, getting your name up as grand champion is the reward. Whereas with Jersey Jack, having, the screen explode, the light show go off, the sounds just roar, that's their goal, to make you feel something, not just that you got a high score.
You can also put up a high score as well. It's just, as I said before, it's nice when a pinball machine rewards you for going on that adventure and not just trying to get a high score for the sake of getting a high score. So,
okay. and I say that, as you know, as a competitive player, I would much rather play a Stern in a competition because I know what I'm going for, and really all I have to worry about is where the ball is, where it's going to go to, and hopefully I can control the ball. But understanding the rules, they're pretty linear for the most part, and so I can just park that part of my brain that knows the rules and just focus on what I'm trying to do. So I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've got there's a Darlington
and obviously
in
now
Melbourne.
with Keith Elwin joining them, maybe it's even going to go further into that competitive angle.
Yeah, well, I heard today on Jeff Teolis's pinball profile.
I heard that too.
Shout out to Jeff, amazing voice. And
it's we'll probably talk about all the other podcasts at some stage, but there's a couple that come up, and Jeff is one of them, and I met him at Papa this year, and he's just a great guy. And it's just one of the ones that I like because it's someone new that he's talking to each week, and I love the interview style. And there's that booming voice, the radio voice. It is fantastic.
That's the goal. That's the goal in life, to have a voice like Jeff Teolis. So, hello, welcome to Pinball Profile. No, I won't try and do it. Now, yeah, he interviewed Keith Elwin, and Keith Elwin said that he's not only designing his pinball machine, with the help of the Stern engineers, but he's also creating the rule set for it as well, which is really exciting because I have a theory that the better the pinball machine, the better the player for a software programmer, the better the software will be. Lyman Sheets and Keith Johnson are awesome pinball players, and their rule sets are amazing. Everyone else, not in the same league. I mean, you can find joy in playing the pinball machines from the other software programmers. But I feel like in the current climate, those two guys kind of stand above the rest. So it'd be really interesting to see what the world's number one pinball player, what he thinks a good rule set will be.
I was very fortunate last year, as I said, when I was at Arcade Expo, when he launched revealed to the public his Archer pinball. And,
you were there.
I was there. I didn't. It was funny. I didn't actually get in there in time. I was trying to compete. So when I got there, the door was shut, but I watched it from the window. But I did manage to play it after, and it was a whitewood. There was some video, there was some lights, but and we're probably chopping here a bit, but like dialed in for the first time, every shot felt fantastic, just really good. But not only that, he's also got a bit of innovation around how some of the ball flows and the Newton balls and all that kind of stuff. But I think what you found there is somebody that probably has played so much pinball, and you've got to think that the competition is really what's enjoyable, but is playing pinball really that much fun? So it's like somebody who's finding playing all these other machines probably just a bit dull because he's played them so many times, has built a table layout that is just absolute fun. And it is fun. And it was just a whitewood, but it was so much fun. So
now that information's most of it anyways is he had a blog with his progress, and now that's kind of been scrubbed off the internet. Possibly part of his agreement with Stern, and people have hypothesized that maybe his first pinball machine will kind of be a tweaked version of the Archer layout.
I hope it is. But
maybe
it was
maybe it's just because he doesn't want his designs kind of out there, and he doesn't want to answer questions. Who knows? I'm sure people close to him know, but it's interesting to see what his first title is. And hey, I've got a Star Wars Elite pre-ordered, and maybe I should be cancelling and holding out for what Keith has to offer, because I feel like if I'm really disappointed by Star Wars, it's the first and last time I get a Stern. Yeah, look,
he obviously wasn't giving much away on how long it's going to take. He was pretty much saying it's ready when it's ready. And you know what? He's I know we're probably jumping to another manufacturer, but it's almost like that's the home pin method of the design, where mention it, but then don't talk about it again, so people don't constantly ask you, where is it?
Well, we can talk about Homepin now.
Let's talk about Homepin.
Jump to him. Sure. So Homepin is making Thunderbirds pinball, or Thunderbirds are a go, I believe it's called. You get in trouble if you just call it Thunderbirds.
Right. Okay.
On Aussie Arcade, it's you have to say it right. So he started his journey a long time ago. I think it was in 2013 or so. And he, instead of making it in Australia, he decided to set up shop in China and make it there. And instead of making a pinball machine kind of like Spooky, using as many off-the-shelf parts as possible, he decided to kind of reinvent those and get them all kind of made in China. So he had to design, sample, source, create injection molds for everything, including screws and everything. And it's just taking a while, and there isn't much known. Like, I don't think a lot of people know the layout of the machine, who's designed it, who's doing the software for it. Maybe they're no names and they're new to pinball, and that's why he doesn't want to mention it. There were rumors a while ago that as soon as he said, I'm not going to mention the designer, but he's a well-known designer, everyone was like, it's J-Pop, John Popdick. This is while the whole Magic Girl and Raza shitfest was going on. So
the big rumor I'd heard was Barry Alsler, but people were just randomly throwing out names of people that hadn't designed a machine for a while.
Yeah, and Mike's I think he seems, I've never met him before, but he seems to be a very kind of experienced engineer, so to speak. So he knows how to design things with low fault rates, and he's improved certain things that you think, hey, why didn't they do that before? Like the lighting under the slings and things like that, like the GI lighting. People just kind of put bulbs there, but he's kind of put a little light strip. But with all of that comes all of the delays and issues with suppliers. And even though you're in China and you're in Shenzhen, you're in the thick of things. He's promised a machine a while ago, and it still isn't here. He is promising again to bring it to Pinfest. He promised to bring it to Pinfest last year, which is, I know there's a Pinfest in the US. This is our version, which is pretty much the only kind of expo style event we have. Yeah. But it's pretty small, I believe. Yeah. So he promised. He's a man of his word, so he promised to bring whatever he had in 2016, and he pretty much just kind of like got a table and laid out a couple of things with a couple of mechs on there. This year he's a lot further along, but he's on TikTok. He's on a bit of a deadline, so we haven't been hearing that much from him lately compared to usual, and we're very interested to see what he brings to Pinfest this year.
Now, I'm going to just bring up the topic that I had heard your view on this on another podcast. I won't mention it, but I'm going to talk about the theme, Thunderbirds, right? So, I'm not going to quote what you said, but you're not a big fan of the theme, right?
It doesn't mean anything to. I'm not saying I'm a fan. It doesn't mean anything to me. For me, and as I've mentioned before, I'm a bit older than you. When I heard about this theme, I just went, holy crap, what a fantastic theme. The things you can do with this theme. Like, if you want a world under glass, you can have this because, effectively it was puppets. So everything was pretty much miniaturized anyway. And now you can miniaturize it further. And again, all I was thinking of was, what could you do with each of the Thunderbird, the actual, the spaceships themselves? What could you do with, Lady Penelope's Rolls Royce or whatever it was? And, what could you do with the palm trees? And then we saw recently, him showing the pool, where the pool opens and a ball comes out of the pool. And I just went, yes, that's what I was hoping he would do, because you're right. No one's actually seen anything about this machine. So we don't know whether, he's going for an 80s throwback, like, let's say, Total Nuclear Annihilation, or is he going to be contemporary with the likes of a Stern or a Jersey Jack? Nobody really knows what he's aiming for. I think he is quite traditional. I remember him saying that he only wants 2 flippers, like traditional pins. Like, he doesn't, he might change, but I remember he said he doesn't believe in a 3rd flipper. which I thought, all the pinball machines I love have a third flipper and stuff going on in the upper playfield. But he is, I think, going to be the only manufacturer now, or possibly the only manufacturer, to not include an LCD with his pin. So it's going to be a new pinball machine with a dot matrix display, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, manufacturers have now progressed to LCD, but as we'll kind of discuss with the little Star Wars review, does it add much to the game, and are manufacturers using it correctly, and does it actually help, or is it just for the person watching behind to say, hey, cool, I remember that scene from Star Wars and The Hobbit.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, but as I said, we haven't seen much. We're just guessing. He did say that he's not going to show drips and drabs. He's just going to kind of reveal it. But now he is kind of showing drips and drabs. So it kind of leads you to believe, well, did he just not have anything to show back then? Or, does he now kind of need the confidence of everyone that pre-ordered a couple of years ago? Does he need their patience and kind of want to show and prove to the world that he is still making things in China? So we'll report back that when we have things to report on. And are you going to Pinfest this year, Marty? Or?
No, I'm not this year. My like I mentioned it before, Papa was my big trip this year. But what I was going to say was that, hopefully we'll reach out to Mike and see if we can get him on. It'd be really good for him to be able to come on to an Aussie podcast.
Exactly. He's been hard to get to reach, I believe. So China, I wonder if that's got to do with him just not wanting to go on a non-Australian podcast, because he did go on Pinheads a while ago, and it was a really good interview. So
it was great.
That's our goal.
But that's our gold level goal. Our platinum level is for us to be able to be the world premiere streaming on the Melbourne Silverball League Twitch channel. I'm putting that challenge out to Mike now. Let us be the first people to we can be the Jack Danger of Australia.
Well, I know 3 people that I'm friends with in the kind of the collector community that have pre-ordered a Thunderbirds Arago pinball. So I might be your avenue to that.
Well, please do. But as I said, for me, I remember at the time hearing a lot of feedback, people saying, I don't get the theme, I don't. But for me, and maybe it is of a certain age and a certain location in the world, Thunderbirds for me it's a dream theme. I think it's fantastic.
Well, someone mentioned something interesting on Pinside. I think it was Pinside or Aussie Arcade, and they said, if it doesn't work out, or if you want to appeal to the American crowd more, why don't you retheme it? After you do Thunderbirds, retheme it to Team America.
Team America, World Police.
Team America.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I was like, holy shit! Like that's what Thunderbirds is to me. Like as soon as he said that, I was like, okay, I get why. I get that was like a spoof of Thunderbirds.
Yeah,
it didn't click before someone said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would be. I would buy that if they had a America fuck yeah multi-ball.
Yeah.
I would buy that, but I'm immature, so Mike actually responded and he said no, not doing that.
No,
so.
I did actually watch that movie. Unrelated to this discussion, I actually did watch that movie last week because a friend of mine was in New York and he was saying whether he should go and see Book of Mormon, which everybody you should. It's fucking hysterical. It is so good. But I said, you watch the scene, the Everyone Has AIDS song, out of context now, but that in a whole musical is Book of Mormon. Right.
Oh my gosh, you can have maybe the end where they're going AIDS.
That's one.
You can have an AIDS. You know how like in Simpsons Pinball Party, how there's the Dough Frenzy Switch Frenzy mode. Yeah, you can have an AIDS frenzy, switch frenzy mode. Every time you hit a switch, they just say AIDS.
So is it the title of our first podcast? Is it Head2Head Pinball, Everyone Has AIDS?
Oh, no.
Like, what's happening to this podcast?
Let's do it. Let's make the headlines. Let's let everyone know that we are 2 immature guys.
That's our message to the world from Australia.
How about this as well? There's a video mode, right, where she asks you, I will make love to you if you promise not to die, and you have to choose wisely. It's like the Indiana Jones choose wisely video mode. Yes or no?
Funny. And look, there's obviously other manufacturers as well. We could talk all day. Oh, look, we could probably dedicate maybe 2 to 3 episodes on Dutch pinball and where they're at. I think for this week, no update, but we'll keep that one. American pinball we've got to talk about. And then I'm sure there's others as well. Obviously, we talked about Spooky.
Yeah, so Highway Pinball as well. They've got new owners, and Cointaker got a shipment. And it was quite funny. I saw the photo, and it was like, we got our new shipment, and everyone's like, woo! And it was kind of like angled in a certain way where you didn't know. It was in their factory, so they have a lot of pinball machine boxes around. And everyone's like, how many are there? And they didn't lie. They didn't say, stay tuned to find out. They're like 4 machines. And you kind of look on Pinstar, the upvotes for, the first picture was like 60 or something. And the upvotes when they said 4 standard machines was kind of like, 5 upvotes. So, still a long way to go for Highway Pinball's new manufacturers, but some people are getting refunds. Some people are kind of being ignored. It's a hard situation, I think, with the refunds because some people do credit card chargebacks because they felt like that's their only avenue to get a refund. Yeah. So it's hard to then contact the company and say, oh, hey, I didn't know, the company was going to be saved by you guys. Can I have a refund? Well, if there's a chargeback that's going on, they can't just say, here's your refund. We'll give you a bank deposit refund. And then their credit card company manages to get it back as well. And then they kind of double down their losses. So, I'm sure that'll all get sorted out. But, that's a long story for another day.
It is. But just in short, what are your impressions of Full Throttle?
I only played, about 2 or 3 games. I went to Chicago Pinball Expo last year in 2016, and they had 1 Full Throttle, or was it 2, set up next to the aliens that were there. And it was hard to get excited. Even though I'd never played Full Throttle before, it was hard to get excited about that when, it was the first public showing of Alien. But yeah, I don't have anything good to say. I don't have anything bad to say. It's one of those, it's one of those themes where I'm not into cars and I'm not into motorbikes and racing motorbikes. And I know some people in Australia are, but it's a niche market within a niche market. If you draw a Venn diagram of people that are interested in pinball and people that are interested in motorbike racing, you're going to have a very, very small cluster. Very small. So I think one of them came to Australia.
Yeah, it was, and it was on location as well. So Zach's Amusements is, a company that sells machines here, and they had it on location as well, and it was constantly broken. But if I can tell you my thoughts on Full Throttle with a bit of a story, and again it comes back to Papa, and yes, I'm sure there's going to be a whole show dedicated to it because it was such an amazing experience. But at Papa, the machines are just in phenomenal condition. Like I'll save it for another day. But I played Full Throttle because I had played it here and I thought, maybe I needed to give it a go. And it broke down. And then I found if you turn the power off and put it back on, it would reset would fine. It'd go for about 5 minutes and then it would break down. So what they had at Papa is if there's a machine that's broken, they have these A4 sheets or letter, if you're in the US, with, you get a pen and you say name of the machine, what's the fault in the machine, blah, 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 blah. And I remember on Full Throttle at Papa, I wrote, the machine is freezing and also it is a fucking terrible game.
Oh, no, was that you, Marty?
And I just left it on the front, on there, and that was it. I just thought they needed to know, but I'm sure they know.
Are you sure it's because you weren't playing it? You were playing it 5 minutes at a time, and it was freezing. Like if you
maybe we had a shorter game.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I remember asking Andrew, who's the distributor of Alien Pinball, a while ago, and I said I remember Zach's had a pinball machine, so like, are you planning to have another? What happened there? And he was like, he didn't know that he had an exclusive agreement with Stern that he can't stock any other pinball machines. And I'm not sure if that's true or if Zach's tried to get orders for it and realized that kind of nobody wanted it. Because I believe there's less than 100 produced. But I think some people that in Australia that have ordered an Alien pinball machine also ordered the kit for a full throttle. So we'll see more of them here, but I believe there's only, I think Zach sold it to a private collector. So there's one person probably in Melbourne that has a full throttle, but
it's probably not working because there's no.
It's probably broken as well. Yeah. No
anyway, move on from Highway because I could go on. I was so close to putting my money down on an Alien. So close. Anyway, so
the two we have left are Planetary Pinball, who are doing all the remakes, and Spooky Pinball. I think we'll do Spooky first, and then because the Planetary will lead on to our next topic. Yeah. So Spooky Pinball, they've got America's Most Haunted, Rob Zombie, and Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle, which is yet to be revealed.
Yeah.
I'm guessing at Expo it'll be revealed in October, so 3 more months.
Yeah.
So there's no distributor for Spooky Pinball in Australia. So there's a company called what is it?
Pizza and Pinball, isn't there?
Pizza and Pinball, yeah. So it's basically like a pizza shop that has a bunch of pinball machines on site, and they wanted America's Most Haunted, so they kind of like organized a shipment down to Australia. So you still pay Spooky, but it comes down, and they deal with all the customs clearance and whatnot. And I think Australia was the only country that got a shipment of America's Most Haunted besides, locally within the US.
Right. Okay.
It didn't. It wasn't certified for Canada or Europe. I think our laws here are a bit more relaxed. So if people want an America's Most Haunted in Canada, they have to kind of drive it over the border, and hopefully the Canadian customs don't, it's like contraband.
Yeah.
And in Europe as well. But I'm sure they'll sort out those issues once they start growing and making more pinball machines. But you played my America's Most Haunted. I gave it to Daniel, and we did a little temporary pinball swap, and I think that's when we first.
We did a stream of it too. That was the first time we met. And look, I've got very fond memories of it, and it comes back to the fact that I like really punishing games. I like them to be really tough, and it's really tough. It's really fast. The modes are short and sharp. I really liked it. I know that there some people it doesn't gel with, and some people talk about, I don't know, maybe that there's not as many features as they would expect from a Stern machine, but I don't see too much of a difference really. But you had it for longer than I did. What did you think?
Yeah, it was a game that I bought it without playing it because all of the machines went to Queensland and New South Wales, different states in Australia, and I wasn't going to fly over to play the game. So when someone privately kind of messaged me and said, "Oh, hey, I heard you might be looking for a America's Most Haunted. Do you want mine? It's home use only and comes with these extras." I said, "Sure. I'll be the crash test dummy for Melbourne." And I love the machine. It made me laugh probably more than
it's
any
very
Stern
funny.
machine has made me laugh. I mean, it's kind of Bally Williams, like a modern take on the Bally Williams humor. But for some reason, I still to this day can't put my finger on why, but I never felt like playing it for hours. It was just 1 or 2 games, and then I was done and on to the next pinball machine. I had to kind of like force myself to play it in the end. And I'm not sure if it was shot satisfaction or like the scoring, how, if you have a multi-ball kind of going on, you can just, it's jackpots in the middle and you can just kind of just keep on shooting that easy shot. I can't put my finger on exactly why I don't really enjoy playing the machine as much as others, but it was time to move it on and onto other things. So I don't hate the game, but I didn't. So I still haven't played a Rob Zombie. You've played one as well.
I have, and I reckon we'll probably save it for another one because I wouldn't mind going into detail on my thoughts on Rob Zombie. I don't think I could do it justice, but I really like it, and again, it's punishing. Yeah,
so they sold out of both pinball machines. Well, I think there's a couple of Rob Zombies still left, and the reason for that is that America's Most Haunted.
They've just made their last one, haven't they? And it's been put to charity.
That was a couple of months ago, I believe, but I still think there was still, like, they made that as like their number 300, but they still had kind of like, 15 pinball machines left because a lot of people dropped out because they're a small pinball manufacturer, the distance between the first pinball machine and the last, on a small production run of 300 was still around a year.
Yeah.
So people, so if you're sitting there at 300 and one becomes available for the same price and you can get it now, then why wouldn't you drop out? So they've changed the rules with Alice Cooper Nightmare Castle that if you order and put a deposit, you cannot get that deposit back if you cancel unless you find someone else to take your position. Right, so okay. I think Alice Cooper is going to be, so a lot of people were speculating about Rob Zombie and the resale value. I mean, if you can buy a pinball machine and guarantee you're going to get the same amount back or more, then why not?
Yeah,
but with Alice Cooper, you can't do that. You actually have to like the game because you can't cancel. So I think Alice Cooper is their first, I don't want to say their first real test because they've been through a lot as a small company, but it's going to be a big test for them to see if they can sell out of 500 pinball machines, and can they actually sell more than their other Total Nuclear Annihilation, which there seems to be more hype about that, obviously because people have seen it and it's been streamed with Jack Danger. But it'd be interesting to see the comparisons of someone they're kind of contract manufacturing for, Scott Denisi, and their own creation. So we'll see what happens with Spooky Pinball in the coming months.
And then and obviously Planetary with Attack from Mars is out. Probably the only thing to really sort of ask is what's the speculation on what's coming out next? I mean, I'd been hearing for ages, but it's really hard to know what is speculation, what is reality, and what's just wishful thinking. Are people just saying, I want you to do my next favourite game? And I'd heard it was Monster Bash was going to be next.
Yeah.
And then I think we're hearing Cactus Canyon is going to be next. I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, this is the interesting thing is that with Medieval Madness, they tried to be it seems like they tried to be as true to the original as they could be, with new technology. You've got the clusters of LEDs that mimic incandescent lights. Even though they're LEDs, they look like incandescents. And when I had one here, it kind of drove me crazy. I wanted to, I switched it to LED mode, because I don't want that. I play with the lights off, and I kind of wanted to actually see the ball. Now with, and the only difference, I guess, the major difference was the shaker and the improved dots, which look absolutely amazing. Now, with AFM Remake, they've proven that they're willing. They made the classic. I'm not sure how many people in Australia are going to get the classic, but they said, well, hey, let's make a topper for it. Let's make a bigger screen. So they're not being true to the original, but I think people are accepting it. They're saying, well, this is a better version of a classic. Why wouldn't you have a bigger screen? Like, why does it need to be the exact same size as a normal screen, especially if we're upscaling the dots? So if they did make Cactus Canyon, we've seen with the Cactus Canyon continued software. So Cactus Canyon Continued basically is an extension and a rewrite of the original code, because Williams basically made that game, and they said, well, when we're ready to start production on Pinball 2000, I believe this is the story, we'll pull the plug on Cactus Canyon and whatever we're making at the time. So I think there were only 931 machines, which for a Williams machine was very low. So yeah, there's gaps in the software, and people love the game so much, and credit to the pinball community that someone's created a continued version of the software
with
the
code.
Yeah, basically it's a computer.
Hashtag where's the code? Well,
yeah, there's no hashtags back then. But,
no, there wasn't. No,
I'm sure people would have been outraged, but back then you just kind of I think RGP was around back then, but. Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see if they do make Cactus Canyon, will there be a toggle switch, kind of like a pin sound board, where you got the original software, you flick a switch, and you're on the continued software, and then they have to kind of pay the guy.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, but I like with Attack from Mars Remake, for the purists, they can get a brand new version of a machine that. And look, I know you're saying already that you've got one, and it is in mint condition. I've played it; it is phenomenal. But probably going on to another topic, but, those kinds of machines, to get a mint version of, let's say, Attack from Mars, like, not the remake, what would you be paying for in Australia at the moment for a mint Attack from Mars?
Or
12 grand?
a lot.
13? 14?
Or I know one that was beyond mint. It was better than new.
Not sure that's
and
possible.
It went for. Well, I mean, the clear coat processors they have now are better than what they had.
Yeah, sure.
22 years ago. And it wasn't powder coated in a certain way. They didn't have color DMG. He got, I think, 15.5 for it.
What's that in American money?
Jeez.
Okay, here we go.
11 or 12.
I'm gonna do my calculations on the fly. Here we go. Except that my phone is now. Okay, here we go. Everybody, bear with. Here we go.
Edit this out.
I am the editor. So what did we say? 15,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
That is, ladies and gentlemen, $11,924 US.
I guess the problem is that a lot of people can get machines restored, and there's a lot of people in Australia that do it. But if you have a junker that needs, I don't want to say the word junker, but if you have a machine that needs a lot of work, it's worn, there's insert damage. If those machines were $5,000 and you can spend $5,000 to bring the machine up, that's fair enough. But you can sell a junker for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 because it's weird, the collectors are a weird breed of human, and they buy stuff and then they don't let go of them.
Yeah,
and
particularly
that's why
in Australia.
Yeah, it is.
Most of the machines here stay in people's collections. Like, the only machines you see really on location, bar for locations like, let's say, Pinball Paradise in Melbourne, which has got some older machines, and there's the Pinball Museum in Neil, but most venues have Stern machines in them, and that's all you're really going to see. And particularly older machines, they stay in people's collections. So I think where
are they? I mean, are they being played? Are they not being switched on? It's just, it's like all these pinball machines that had a fire sale back in the day. And I mean, just before we started talking, I saw a Judge Dredd that came up on Gumtree, and it was pretty damn cheap. And I messaged the person, I have no interest in buying a Judge Dredd machine, but
Gumtree is our version of Craigslist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know the story. I'm like, how long have you had it for? And she was just like, it's been in my possession for 15 years, and it looked close to mint, and she only wanted $3,500 for it, and that was the asking price. So I'm sure you could negotiate a bit, but I guess that's around $2,500 US, which isn't like an absurdly low price, but they're the machines that you want, the ones that aren't being played by, that they're bought by someone who. Yeah, bought by someone who kind of just bought it because they played pinball in their childhood, and then it just sits there and does nothing, switched off. They're the ones that are cheap and good condition. So, talking about remakes, so next topic we want to talk about is how many pinball machines can be remade, because they obviously have to be sold for a certain price, and I know. Attack from Mars in the US is a lot cheaper. Was a lot cheaper than Medieval Madness. I'm guessing because of the mechs and what was involved, but still quite expensive in Australia because of our dollar conversion and shipping and small market. But how many machines do you think at the moment can be remade? Because they're not going to remake, as I said, a Judge Dredd and say, hey, this costs $12,000, because no one's going to buy it. So. How many machines do you think can be remade before they run out?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and you know what? I could answer it really poorly by saying supply and demand, right? It really is dependent on how many are out there, what they're going for, and how many buyers there are. And it's a bit of an unknown at the moment, but, the likes of, Medieval Madness was an easy one, right? Everyone talks about Medieval Madness, and there wasn't really a lot of them in Australia, so I'm assuming that's possibly the world as well, but... if you go down the list of some of them that it could be, like we talked about Monster Bash today is still really popular. And, the ones
one sold for almost 14 grand the other day.
Right, there you go. 14 grand. And I don't even know. I've seen them go for, upwards of 9,000, requiring quite a lot of work. But
Yeah.
I think, again, collectors or restorers will look at that and say, well, I'll pay for it for $9,000, spend $1,000, $2,000 on it, and then I can sell it for $14,000. I mean, that's the ridiculous prices that we pay here. So I reckon, Monster Bash would be another one. But again, we don't really know where the market ends. I think when you start going down the list of really, Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is another one that would just, I reckon, obviously the Williams one, not the Stern one. Although, we'll talk about my odd taste in machines at a later stage. But,
Avatar.
I love Avatar. Don't kill me for it. But, I think that there are still there's a massive appetite for these machines that right now, particularly in Australia, you just look every week. They're at ridiculous prices. So and
they sell as well.
They do sell.
$15,000.
That's right.
In Australia, and people were arguing back and forth, and it was being sold by a guy called Chris, and he repairs pinball machines. And I bumped into him the other day, and I said, "How's that Indiana Jones going?" He said, "It's sold." Yep. So, and I told him, "Hey, there was a Aussie Arcade thread today," and he just laughed, and he's just like, he said something important, which kind of relates to what Stern, people bitching about Stern prices. Now, he said, people don't understand that if you don't like the price of something, you don't buy it, and that's it. You can talk about it all day long, but you just don't buy it.
That's right.
And he goes, if it sells, then you've just wasted your time. And instead, I didn't ask him what price he got for it, but he was advertised for 15,000 Australian dollars for a nicely restored Indiana Jones. And it kind of relates back to Stern Pinball. It's just like people are bitching about what's on Star Wars and the lack of stuff, but I'm part of the problem. I mean, I've still at the moment got my pre-order, and it's all my fault. So
what's an Attack from Mars remake? Let's just say not the limited edition, but just say standard edition. How much is that landed in Australia worth?
You're putting me on the spot.
I really am.
Yeah, I think it's 11,000 Australian dollars, and if you do the conversion, it's a bit more. There's a bit more of a markup on there. Right. But Australia is like, people want LEs.
I know they do, but that's not helping me make my point, Ryan. So get all that logic out of it. All I'm saying is, right now, if I had a choice of an 11,000 brand new remake standard that looked exactly like Attack from Mars from the day versus one that's been shopped right up its ring and it's going to cost me $15,000, I would go the planetary one for sure.
Okay.
But you know what? That's me. I don't know whether everyone's going to feel like that. But
yeah, no.
That's $4,000 difference.
Yeah.
Or maybe $3,000.
Well, I think in the future we'll interview some people that are purists and what they think, and because I had about 5 people messaging me saying, because they know that I kind of flip pinball machines around. I buy them. I have them for a couple of weeks. I've had pinball machines that I've owned for less than a week and sent it on its way.
Just discarded them and threw them around.
It's like, I'll give it a go. No, I don't like it. And I kind of fell in love with Attack from Mars. It's the only pinball machine that I've completed the wizard mode and not wanted to sell immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
Only belly game. So when the Attack from Mars, I knew it was going to get announced. I bought it fully knowing that the remake was going to get announced. And I think I had about 5 people that would constantly message me every couple of weeks saying, "Hey, are you sick of it?" I'm like, well, not yet, but even so, you're like 39, so start looking for another machine. And everyone's dropped off except for one guy around the corner from here. Everyone, all the other people have pre-ordered an Attack from Mars remake, but there's one guy, and he mentioned it the other day, and I said, well, there's a remake, just go bloody buy the remake and leave me alone. And he said, well, I don't want the fucking remake, I want the original. Like the remake means absolutely nothing to him. So maybe we'll get him on the show. But some other candidates might be for future remakes: Circus Voltaire, Toten, Addams Family. I know there's more Addams Family than
bloody Angelica Houston.
Twilight Zone. I mean, there's a lot of Addams and Twilight Zone. There's a lot of them out there, but the prices are just creeping up crazy.
They are.
And people talk about what happened, like what the prices were 10 years ago, but you just need to look at the last 2 or 3 years, and it's almost like the new in-box price from Stern dictates. People will say, well, hey, you're paying $12,500 for a Stern Star Wars and look what's in that. Why would you not pay close to that for a fully loaded Twilight Zone, which is proven to be, one of the great pinball machines of all time, in a lot of people's opinion, not necessarily mine.
Not mine.
So,
I famously can't stand Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
or Addams Family for that matter. Or 99% of Pat Lawler machines.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I do not.
That's future episodes. Marty hates Pat
is.
Lawler.
We're going to have in one corner we've got Pat Lawler and in the other Steve Ritchie, because I think that those two designers, they're probably best of friends in the world, but those designs appeal to completely different people.
Well, Jersey Jack said when he came down here, he said, well, he's a salesman, and obviously he's going to kind of put Pat Lawler in a better light than Steve Ritchie. He wasn't bagging Steve Ritchie, but he said, I've known Steve Ritchie for years, and Steve Ritchie, if you describe him as an instrument, he's a drum. Like, he beats on the drum. It's loud and it's in your face, and it's amazing, but it's a drum. Bang, 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 bang. I'm Steve Ritchie. Whereas where Pat Lawler is like a finely tuned violin, I think he said. Everything has to be intricately, designed, and everything kind of works together. And I think it was an interesting comparison between them, because I've played Dialed In, you've played Dialed In, and it feels amazing. Like, something about it feels right.
There is just something about how it feels. And I think it is, we'll go into it later, obviously, but it's 3 years of somebody moving a lane by a micron and testing it, going, oh, it's not quite right. I need to spend another 6 months shaving a little bit off to get it right. And you're right. It's just like this fine-tuned instrument that has just been poured over for years and years and years, and everything just feels great about it.
Yeah. I think everyone that really loves pinball, for what pinball truly is, will enjoy playing Dialed In. I mean, he said you've still got people that collect pinball machines that say, oh, I'll never own it because of the theme. It's about a stupid cell phone. But it's not. It's a disaster theme.
With the city. Sure.
Yeah, it's about a city. But yeah, they called it Dialed In, so you can't blame them, right?
No, exactly. So, well, we were going to talk to you about how we have further impressions on Star Wars, but I think probably it's a good idea to throw it over to people to send us in some emails at head2headpinball@gmail.com, and tell us what you think about playing the machine. I think there's a lot more people out there that have played it than we have. I think Ryan and I, we're still yet to play it. I've watched a lot, and I mean a lot. I've watched a lot of video footage, of gameplay footage of it. I feel like I've played it. I feel like I know what to expect, but I'm still kind of, I don't know. I obviously want to play it. I want to feel it. I want to see if I can get immersed in the Star Wars world. So if you do have feedback, send it through to head2headpinball@gmail.com. That is with the number 2. But go to our Facebook page at Head2Head Pinball. If you look, facebook.com/Head2Head Pinball. We're also at Twitter at H2H Pinball. And Instagram, Head2Head Pinball, but we're probably not going to use that. What do you reckon, Ryan?
I don't know. I don't know what we can just take pictures of pinball machines and people can like them. I don't know.
Or of your collection as you flip machines each week. But of course, also don't forget to go to our website at www.headtoheadpinball.com and check us out.
You're about to say .au.
I was about to say, you can tell. But I realised that when I tried to register for the .au domain name, it asked me to be a business, and I'm like, I couldn't be fucked with that. I just did .com.
How far will we take this? Not that far.
I don't think so.
Right.
But there
Thanks
you go.
for listening, and we're going to try and bring out an episode every week. I think we failed to mention that. We're going to try and be a weekly podcast, and probably recording on Monday, so get your emails in before Monday, and probably releasing on Tuesday sometime. We are 2 different people, and we are busy in our own respects, so if a podcast is a little bit late, don't freak out. We're not going to go on a 7-month hiatus. We're gonna give this a good go. So
I reckon we are. And the more you send through information, the more we can talk about, because we certainly don't want.
And if you want to send through hate mail, then we'll take anything.
Yeah.
desperate. This is our first podcast, so any feedback, any abuse, just throw it our way, and we'll even read it out on air.
Yeah, we will. And look, one of the things the reasons why we decided to do this together was I wanted to educate Ryan on competitive pinball, and I wanted to know more about collections and understanding the inner workings of pinball. But between us, we've got a lot of things covered, but we don't know everything, and I'd love to learn more about pinball in areas that I don't know.
Cool.
So,
all right, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys
and
and
we'll
girls,
see
thanks for listening.
you next week.
See ya.
Cue outro music.